It's another week in Star Wars. The internet is still melting down over the Acolyte. Star Wars canon is ruined and the world is ending. No, none of that is true other than people are melting down over the Acolyte. But we're here to talk about it nonetheless. It's another week. I thought a fun episode of the Acolyte this week to talk about, episode 4. How, how about the title of it being just Day? Like,
Not a lot to go off of there.
I
Which, to
finally,
be fair,
it
it
makes
all
sense.
occurred during daytime. So
It was during day, but I didn't actually think about that till about 20 minutes ago. One of my friends had posted like a review video, and it
yeah,
like was in the title, just day, and I
day.
was like,
Yeah.
I didn't even pay attention to what the title was this week because I was so like, oh, I hope we get back
No,
into the action after episode 3. I didn't even look at the title, and I was like, oh, day, because they had to do everything during day.
during the day. Yeah.
I thought that was funny though. So yeah, episode 4, Day. Um, Personally, great follow up to last week because I didn't care for last week's episode so much. Kind of boring to me. Not really sold on the whole, twins being created by the Force thing. That's kind of one of my
Sure.
holdups. But I did like the first 2 episodes. Episode 2 was really good, and I thought episode 4 was really good as well. I don't know how I would rank 4 versus 2. I like them both. And then 3 is my least favorite, which I would say that's probably most people would say that. But
That's
we're
fair.
halfway through the season, so I don't know.
Yeah.
What did you think about this episode?
I feel kind of the same way about them. I enjoyed this episode. I thought it was good to kind of get back to our characters and where they're at. At the third episode, I get what it wanted to do, but I really don't feel like I came away feeling like I got a whole lot that we hadn't. Like, I feel like we've talked about a lot prediction wise and kind of
Yeah.
breaking things down. It confirmed a lot of that, right? We knew something
Mm-hmm.
happened. We knew that it was sketchy. We knew that there was something being hidden, and we're kind of still there, right?
Yeah.
It didn't really clarify a lot of that for a whole episode, so I don't think it did a whole lot for me in terms of understanding the direction of the show or what's going on. But it did drop some interesting tidbits throughout it. There were parts of it I did enjoy. But no, episode 4 was great. I thought it was a really fun episode. We obviously get our big reveal at the end, which was super exciting.
Yeah, that was cool.
I enjoyed episode 4. I thought it was good to get us back on track, and I think it's at a good point halfway through the season.
Yeah, and I thought so. Some people were like, "Oh, it's only what was the runtime? 34
It's like
minutes
30,
was."
yeah.
So by the time you throw in credits, it was probably like 29 minutes
Yeah,
or
it was
something.
short.
I didn't pay attention, but I don't know about you, but for me, in the Bad Batch, I liked when we would get a long episode. And the short ones, I was always kind of like, oh, I wish that would have had 5 or 10 more minutes. But then in Ahsoka, I would always be like, I want them all to be 50 minutes. And in Mandalorian, I like them landing around 45. But for the Acolyte, for whatever reason, I thought 30 was a sweet spot for this show. I really liked how it got to its point. Again, episode 3, the pacing for me was just way off. And so I thought a 30-minute was it was good, and it left you on that cliffhanger. So that's just a little thing I picked up on as well, was a traditional 30-minute runtime worked for this show for me.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, just nothing beyond what you said. I thought it moved along really well.
Yeah.
And it transitioned really well between the two groups as they kind of moved through the story. So no, I didn't have any issues with the runtime. I mean, it's obviously a huge cliffhanger right there at the end, but other than a few scenes from the trailers, like, and Disney kind of they kind of do this. We've covered the majority of what we've seen in the trailers. There's a few shots that
only a couple at this point
take place within this forest, it looks like, but a lot of what we've seen has been covered. So
yeah, from what I can think off the top of my head, we've got to see Kilnaka mess up Torben. That still has to happen.
So we're
we're gonna get that. I'm thinking that's probably the next episode. I can't imagine because I want us just to pick right up where we left off. And I know that's not how that things work, probably. Like, we probably jump back again and then back up, but we've got to see Kelnaka give Torben that scar and figure out what happened on whatever that planet was called with the witches.
Yeah, it'll be Brendok. It'll be interesting to see if they just jump right in and tell us that, or if they wait. Because we just had Soul kind of reveal to Osha that there's something that she doesn't know, right? That the truth really hasn't been given to her. So I don't know if it'll wait for a quiet moment between those two for that story to be told.
Yeah.
Or if they're just going to give it to us and then we'll have to see her learn it later. I don't know. But that's definitely coming. Based on Soul making that comment to her, you got to think that that's coming pretty soon.
I could see them dragging that out throughout the next 4 episodes, but it could go either way, I guess. And then the other scene, the only thing I can think of is the Sith guy. We assume guy. They call him guy. The Sith guy, there's like the scenes of him in the rain. Like when he's looking and it's rainy, it's like real creepy. Yeah. So that's still got to happen in the forest. And who knows? Like, that's not super spoilery. I mean, it's a guy standing in the rain. So, but we still have to see that. And then outside of that, I think we're in the dark on what's going on.
We haven't seen Vernestra and her light whip yet. So
yes, so she has to show up probably on a rescue mission. Yeah, and we'll talk. We'll touch. I got some predictions about that, so we'll touch on that at the end of the episode. We'll make our predictions for the next half of the season. But since we're halfway through, let's just say, like, out of 10, 1 to 10, what would you rank the first half of this season?
That's hard because I feel like 1, 2, and 4 are really good.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the first 2 episodes did a really great job of setting up the story. I thought they were really engaging. Action sequences were fantastic. Episode 3 kind of dropped off a little bit. I get why they felt like it was necessary. I think it could have been done a little bit differently, but I'm not a TV writer, so
and it could age well. Maybe I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unanswered things that may get closure by the end of the show. We'll just kind of have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But then it picked that back up really well with episode 4. So if I'm willing to put aside episode 3 and wait and see how the show goes, I mean, I'd put it like an 8 so far.
Yeah.
But that's because there's a lot that I'm waiting and reserving judgment on. That's just simply on what I've enjoyed. I've really enjoyed all the little lore pieces that are just scattered throughout that have connected to a lot of other EU and Legend stuff, which has been fun. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. 3 brings it down for me. So if they had just went 1, 2, and the episode yesterday was 3, I would probably give it an 8. It's been good. I've liked the action. Like you said, it's different. I think the acting's fine. Like, some people are saying it's weak acting or whatever, but I don't think, as far as the lines go, some of it's a little clunky, right? Because they've got such a short time period, and sometimes you just have to throw information out there just to move the story along. So I don't know. With episode 3 in there that I just really don't like that much, I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10 so far. But it could change. And a 7 out of 10 is not bad, considering half of the world thinks that the world is ending because of this show. And so, I think it's a good show. I think Star Wars will survive this. I don't think I don't think they're going to run out of money. Disney's probably not going to
survive.
Disney's not going to shut the parks down. I would say 7 out of 10. World's going to keep spinning, and it can get better. Now, I will say, it can get worse. We will probably touch on that a little bit later as well. I know you kind of mentioned that. What was your idea?
Yeah, no, just because I know, thinking about it, there's some big concerns. Really, just one big concern that I have with the second half of the show. So I figured towards the end we can kind of talk about what's the big thing we're worried about going wrong with this show, kind of where it's at. It's funny to me though, because you're talking about the writing. Like sometimes I expect Star Wars writing to be a little clunky
Clunky,
because
yeah.
I mean, if you can get through the prequel movies without feeling like there's bad writing in there, then props to you. Somebody needed to get George on that one and be like, no, we can't put
Well,
this in the movie.
yeah, I mean, even
But
the
it's meant to
well,
be
in the
dramatic,
yeah,
right? Like it's corny, it's cheap. Sometimes I can't roll my eyes hard enough. But that's
Attack
what
of the
he wanted to
Clones,
do, right? He wanted this over the top, really dramatic
soap
soap
opera.
opera type dialogue. And Star Wars is never there. It relies heavily on a lot of themes and motifs, but it's never been subtle in that,
It's
right?
not
Like
about the lines.
they're very clear about this is about good and evil and light and dark and balance and love and sacrifice and greed and selfishness and all these themes that play in Star Wars. That's never been hidden, right? Like it's always
Right.
been on the nose. And so sometimes they say things that I'm like, well, thanks for the fortune cookie there, but at the same time, that's kind of part of Star Wars is that you get those little lines that are so on the nose, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it fits what Star Wars is doing. So,
Right. This is a
know.
way tangent, but when I think of Star Wars, I was just really quickly thinking through my head all the lines that I can think of, like iconic lines in Star Wars. Okay,
Yeah.
not many are positive. Like so, like I hate sand. That's a meme. I hate
It
sand.
is. Yeah.
The General Kenobi, the hello there. I guess that's positive, but like I don't think that was meant to be a thing. It just turned into a thing. Of course, no, I'm your father. That's the big one. That's a good one. But you've got like
it's
somehow
a trap.
Palpatine
It's
returned. It's a
a trap.
trap.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
play. Yeah.
Yeah, like Star Wars isn't about its lines. It's like, oh, Luke blew up the Death Star, stuff like that. So, like, you remember the big scenes and the lines kind of push towards the themes that we know in Star Wars. Like, you do have the big lines, like, I'm a Jedi, like my father before me, things like that.
Oh yeah.
But
That's a great line.
that's a great one. But, like, there's some scattered in there that George Lucas. I mean, Mark Hamill would tell George, like, you can't make us say this stuff.
Yeah, I love those interviews when they're like, "This is terrible."
Yeah, so I honestly in this show I can't think of any lines off the top of my head. So
No, there was one
nothing's
today
standing
that I was
out.
like, "That's kind of cheesy," but then I was like, "Actually, it fits in really well with Star Wars, though." Like, I feel
I
like
think
that's
a
kind of
lot
what
of
happens. Yeah,
Vernestra's lines are kind of like forced, in my opinion. Like
yeah,
she's kind of like that. You know how the Jedi are, where they're like, I'm kind of sick of hearing the Jedi ramble. You know how you can get that way in the
yeah.
prequels. She's kind of
And
that caricature of the prequel Jedi to me.
I wonder if it would feel more natural if I knew her backstory a little bit more.
Yeah, I
Um,
have no clue.
Maybe it fits for people who know her character really
The High
well from the
Republic.
High Republic stuff,
Yeah, maybe so.
but I don't. So
So, at the end of this episode, we are going to discuss what we're maybe kind of worried about for the Acolyte. So, if you're like an Acolyte hater, and for whatever reason you're watching this after we said anything positive about the show, I've got chapters at the bottom. So, like, I'll put down, what we're concerned about. We keep it level headed here so that we have some concerns about all things. Like, I've always said The Mandalorian season 3 is like a hot mess. I will criticize that and the Power Rangers and the Book of Boba Fett. Like, I'm not a sunshine pumper about Star Wars. I just have enjoyed this for the most part. So we'll discuss maybe what we're concerned about later. But let's get into the episode.
Real quick,
yeah.
just props to those of you who listened last week. I apologize for all the audio issues on my end. I was out of town. I thought I had a better connection than I did, and I know it was terrible. So
I will say though, when we were recording, it wasn't that bad. Like when we were both recording, it was fine. So it was something with the connection. But
so
hey,
appreciate those of you who stuck around through that because I know that was annoying.
Well, and they had like they couldn't hear you, and then they have like me. It's like the redneck interpreter, like trying to like they're like, man, I wonder what he was talking about.
Yeah.
But no, all good here. So, and I was like half awake last week, anyways, like delusional with a newborn.
Yeah.
So we'll get better as we go. So, getting into the episode, I think we kind of talked about a good way to break it down. There's the big mission at hand. And then there's maybe some cameos that we want to talk about. Then at the end, you get to the big reveal. You got like May kind of flipping sides. You've got the Sith showing up at the end. Yep. And then obviously from there, we will go into where we think this is going, maybe some concern we have, what we're looking forward to in the second half of this season, the last 4 episodes. So the mission, and one thing I really appreciate about this show, and this is very Star Wars too, to me, is how simple these missions are. So like the first episode, what's it, Trinity from the Matrix, what's her, Indara, May gets her. And so from there, you're like trying to find the killer, right? So it looks like it's Osha. So they go to get Osha and then they figure out it's May. Very simple, straightforward.
Yep.
Episode 2, it's simple. It's like, oh, okay, who's the next person? And they're going to get Torben. And so, okay, let's go stop this before it happens. But they don't. 3 veers. That is not a simple episode at all. It's something else. And then 4, it's simple again. Like, okay, we got to stop Kelnaka. It's just very straightforward. And that is Star Wars, like going into the big room with the Death Star. And it's like, okay, we're going to blow it up. Like that's just Star Wars to me. It's like, okay, here's a problem. Let's go fix it. It's not too convoluted. So the mission was pretty simple. Kelnaka is next. And so trying to go stop that from happening. So you've got the good guys going to do it. Same time, you got the bad guys showing up too. And that's where we're at. So, I mean, super, super, super simple. I think that's maybe what made this episode so good, is it was pretty simple.
Yeah. No, yeah. And that, like you said, that's Star Wars, right? I think the things we love about Star Wars are the characters and their interactions. You know, the background of the story has always been pretty straightforward. Plot wise, it's always been a story of good and evil and the good guys and the bad guys. The shows might be a little bit different in that vein, but yeah, it's good to be back to our characters and kind of seeing where they're moving as this plot moves forward. So I agree.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then I like that they went to Coruscant. It's always cool to see Coruscant. Yeah. I don't think they're overdoing it there, but we'll kind of get into the first maybe touch and go topic that some people don't like, and it's one of the cameos. So you got Ki-Adi-Mundi there, and so they're kind of in that little like the CSI room. You know, they're figuring out what's going on with this this whole chasing May around, and they know like she's trained in the Force. And you see the whatever his species is, Syrian, right? Is that the right way to say it? I'm looking on Wookiee,
so I'm gonna go with that. Yeah.
Looking on Wikipedia right here. That's how it's spelled. That's you got him there, and we've only seen like one of them on screen. So everyone's like, "Oh, it's Ki-Adi-Mundi or whatever." And so turns out it is him. Now people are just flipping out over the fact that the birth dates don't line up. I did not realize that Ki-Adi-Mundi's birth date was like the linchpin of Star Wars canon, but apparently it is.
It all falls apart without it. Yeah.
It really does. So the timeline is skewed over that, but it doesn't bother me. They changed Qui-Gon Jinn's age, like after no one knows it. So they changed his stuff. It doesn't change anything. But either way,
if you go back and look at the amount of Legends and EU stuff
it's a lot
that Lucas changed just by making the prequel movies. Like,
yep.
There were all sorts of things that had been written at that point that he's like, I'm changing.
Yeah.
So
on screen takes precedence, baby.
It's gonna happen. If it's not canon, it's fair game. So,
and if it turns out to be something disrespectful, I'll say it. But this is not a disrespectful change. Nope. But the fact that he is in the loop that this is going on, it is an interesting choice that they put the one guy who says we haven't seen the Sith in a millennia. So like. You know,
it was an interesting choice.
Like, why pick him?
To have known people are going to get mad about it.
And so it almost seems like it was kind of like a rage bait type thing, like try to get people mad. But it doesn't bug me. Like, again, I hadn't thought of this character since I saw what about the droid attack on the Wookiee meme the last time I saw it, or whenever that was. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. But the fact that they choose him to kind of be in the loop on this.
Yeah.
Their workaround is that they're like, oh, she was trained by a rogue Jedi or whatever, and then Vernestra and Soul are still trying to keep it under wraps, like the cover up. I see where people can be frustrated about it, but I don't think we should be too worried yet. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on, like my concerns. This is going to make my concern list.
Okay.
But they're there, not necessarily like this scene specifically, but just in general, the idea of a Sith and the Jedi knowing about it. But that scene, they kind of dig themselves deeper on the cover up, that they've got to like really go take care of this. So now they send Soul with a bunch of people to go save Kelnaka. And so they've got the Plo Koon look-alike. It's not Plo Koon. It is I got this pulled up. His name is Ithia Pine. And he is a Keldor Jedi that just so happens to look like Plo Koon. So I thought they were really going to be rocking the boat, having both of them in it, and like somebody from the High Council directly on this mission. So kind of a sigh of relief that it wasn't Plo Koon. Yeah. But if it would have been, like, it would have been interesting to see how they worked that out.
I mean, to be fair, you could put 4 or 5 Keldors in a lineup, and I couldn't pick out Plo Koon. So I know what he looks like, but I don't know that I can tell various Keldor people apart.
Yeah.
No, that's not that surprising though, because they've always been like a big Force group. They
are,
like,
yeah.
In the Legend stuff, they like had their own group. It was like the
and Force Lightning too.
Baron Do Sages or something.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of cool to have another one in there.
Yeah, and Dave loves like having Keldor stuff, like Plo Koon stuff. Yeah. Like in Andor, they've got the totally, little in the relic shop, or not the relic shop, but Luthen's thing. So that was like a lot of people were talking about it. I put them in my thumbnail for my little episode breakdown because I knew people were talking about it, and so it was interesting to see, fun to talk about. I'm cool with Ki-Adi-Mundi being in it. I'm cool that it wasn't Plo Koon, but I will say interesting choice to include Ki-Adi-Mundi for sure. Yeah. Kind of a bold choice, but either way, they go from there. They're on their mission. May is on her mission with Kymir, and so I mean, Kymir seems pretty fishy. He knows a whole lot when we get to our predictions towards the end about the bad guy. I'm pretty sure it's him, but he's kind of leading May through the forest, which is odd that he knows his way around. And then the good guys have Basil, the little like rodent looking thing. Yeah. I don't know. That was interesting, I guess. Yeah. I mean, some people are like, "Oh, it's the greatest thing ever," and I'm like, okay. So
I mean, there's always some little alien that gets introduced. I mean, you get the fun little. Yeah. I mean, because it's Star Wars, so you got to have a robot like mess with some little alien person or something. So.
What if they had like a live action Batcher, like whatever that species is, like that was smelling and chasing? But I mean, that sells a lot less toys than Basil. So I'm sure they know what they're doing.
With Pip and Basil, that was very Star Wars. Very
it was.
R2 or BB-8 shocking or doing something to somebody.
So. I love that droid, by the way. The little Pip droid. Yeah. It's cool. I like Star Wars doesn't mess up on droids, regardless of what you think about like all of the projects. BB-8 is awesome. K2 is awesome. Yeah. B2 Emo is awesome in Andor. B2. You've got what's in Fallen Order. BD1, love that droid. Yep. I mean, everyone loves R2, but like Star Wars doesn't miss on droids, and I don't think they missed on it in this one either. Yeah. So that was cool to see. Trying to think. I mean, that it's just so straightforward. Like they go and the good guys are going through this forest. The bad guys are going through the forest. They're both getting towards where Kelnaka is. Don't really get any Kelnaka action, which is a disappointment for me so far. Yeah. We're going to get in a flashback, but like, I mean, before the season where it's like, oh, we're going to get a Wookiee Jedi or whatever, like we were talking like seeing some combat and stuff. So I feel like we maybe have been robbed of that. Maybe we see it in like flashbacks, but still, I thought it was going to be like Wookiee Jedi fighting a Sith. Yeah. That would have been so cool to see. Like, just, man, that's like a Star Wars bucket list thing. And I think we're probably going to miss that. But they both, they get there. And May has decided she's going to be good now because Osha is alive, and that changes everything. And the good guys get there too late. May gets there too late. The Sith guy got there before her and kills Kelnaka while he's sitting in a chair. I presume asleep or something. I don't know. But what do you think about her just being like 30 seconds into a conversation, she's like, I don't have to be bad anymore. I can turn myself in. Like, that was quick.
Yeah, it was a little clunky. It doesn't bother me because I think that's in and of itself, that's kind of the biggest weakness of the dark side, right? Like if you draw on your emotions, right? Like raw emotions for your strength and for your
Yeah.
to kind of fuel, whatever it is you're doing. We've seen it throughout Star Wars, right? Like you're also kind of confounded when you have these really strong positive emotions that you don't know
Yeah.
what to do with, right? It's
They
how
always
Vader comes
turn.
back, right? Like it's how Vader returns. It's how
Yeah.
we see it with Kylo Ren fighting, the things that he feels, and so I I don't have an issue with it thematically. I mean, like
Yeah,
it
it was
makes
gonna
sense.
happen.
And again, I think that's like the core weakness of the dark side, right? Like you focus so much on your emotions that you can be overpowered by a very positive emotion because
Yeah.
that's what fuels you. And so I didn't have an issue with her changing sides. It was very very abrupt though.
Yeah.
It was
I
it
wasn't
really was just
expecting it
like a
now.
like
Yeah.
really just like on a dime just turns. And so um, I think we'll see where it goes with the story. Like I'm not sure what part she plays now going forward. I think
Yeah.
it makes the rest of her story a little more interesting now that she's not the person necessarily
Yeah.
being hunted, but still probably on the wanted list for the Jedi there. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're gonna she's essentially turning herself in, and she's like, I'm gonna be safe in prison. It's kind of her idea
yeah,
on all of this. So I don't know. I mean, it was super quick. I'm fine with her turning. Like
I mean, if
you expect the bad guy to turn in
yeah,
Star Wars, right? The kind of benevolent bad guy
right.
that wasn't always bad. You expect that turn at some point. That's
Like
very
if
Star Warsy.
if Luke can turn Vader, then certainly May can turn because
Yeah.
she finds out her sister's alive. So
It just takes Vader significantly more
a
time.
lot longer. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot longer. But again, I'm okay with it as a whole. It was just kind of clunky for this episode, if there's any complaint. And so again, she doesn't get to Konaka in time, and the bad guy finally reveals himself there, which was super cool. I mean, if
yeah,
that scene wasn't in the episode, it does make me wonder where I would rank this episode if you don't have that closing minute and a half or whatever it was.
yeah,
But he floats down there. He goes up to Osha and ignites his saber. Got the creepy smile, and then all the Jedi see him, and he's just like
yeah,
flicking Osha to the side with like a finger, and then knocks his saber, pushes them back. Like it's the thing you see in the trailer.
yeah.
Super cool. And from there it goes black. That's the end of the episode. So the next time we pick up in this story, I feel like they've got to be fighting, which is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean that was one heck of an ending.
Yeah, one thing I am very excited about is that this does bring us to lightsaber battles.
A real
We
lightsaber
haven't
battle.
we haven't
Yeah.
really had that yet.
Yep.
I sent you. I don't remember if I sent you
You
that
did.
article
Yep.
where
They changed it.
yeah, because we had talked about this before, just
Like
about
a
wanting
couple days before you sent it.
yeah wanting
Yeah.
to see Disney look
Better.
at changing the sabers they use, right? So that they're not these fragile things they have to choreograph around. And so that was
Yeah.
one of her asks. She's like, I need you guys to make these so we can do what they did in the prequels, but still have
Yeah.
the practical effects. And initially, I think the article said initially they were like, we can't do that. But apparently they found a way to
She
do it.
bugged her
So
enough. Yeah.
they have like new props now for these sabers. And so I'm excited to see what that looks like, because so far the action scene's been really good, been really
Yep.
really intense, really fast paced. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what the lightsaber combat looks like in these next few
Yep.
episodes.
When you've got the Amandla, is that her name, Stenberg or something like that plays
Yeah.
Osha and May, she has that quote where she's talking about how much time she needed to train for this, like
Yeah.
with lightsaber duels and stuff. So we're gonna see her with a saber at some point, but one of the two of them, I guess. But
Yeah.
they're talking, and it's she's like, Hayden Christensen needed 120 days or something for Revenge of the Sith or something along those lines.
Yeah.
That was the idea of what she was saying. And she was like, I need that long. And so it
Yeah.
just makes you think, that this could be some really good lightsaber duels. And a lot of people get really mad about a lot of stuff Leslie Headland says, and she has said some out there stuff, admittedly. To me, it's out there. But she's said some reassuring things too. I mean, in that article you sent me, she's kind of taken a dump on the sequel trilogy lightsaber choreography and the sabers they use. I mean, it's stuff we've all complained about. We're like, oh, they're playing with toys and it doesn't look good. And the on-screen stuff has suffered. And she essentially says that. And she's like, so we changed it because we want it to look more like the prequel trilogy. So really excited about the potential for that. And we're going to pick up with lightsaber duels. When you think of Star Wars, you always think of lightsaber duels. So it's going to be really cool to see. I think that's going to be a major positive when we see the Sith guy just taking out all these Jedi. I mean, it's going to be cool.
I really hope. I think he's probably going to like kill one of them pretty quickly, but then I hope they get scattered.
More than one.
And I really hope they get scattered and it becomes like almost like this Predator style, like hunting them in the woods type thing.
Yeah.
That would be really cool if he's like stalking them in different groups.
Well, how many NPCs are on this mission?
I can see him. Yeah, I can see him. I mean,
you got at least 3 or 4 that are going just like that.
And that's the thing. I can see him baiting them by killing a few and running off. I could totally see Yord like chasing him into the woods, right? Like,
I'd be okay if he gets Yord pretty quick. Not a fan.
Yord, they need to do something with him.
He's the caricature of the Jedi, though. You know,
the whole set up to be a good foil with Soul, but like nothing's really come of that. There hasn't been really.
Well, his character's written on purpose, like to make him seem so stiff. Like it's on purpose to kind of generalize the Jedi as a whole and kind of where they're going.
Well, and there's really, I mean, as much as Soul is a lot like Qui-Gon, there's really elements of his relationship like with Obi-Wan, right? Where he doesn't agree with Soul, but at the same time he acknowledges that Soul's a master. Right?
The master,
he acknowledges that he is not one to overrule Soul.
Yeah.
We see that kind of thing with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon some, where Obi-Wan's really like, really? Is this what we're doing? But I mean, he always is like, all right, you're the guy in charge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do with his character.
Yeah, I agree. And let's just kind of talk about where this could go with the Sith guy. So again, we're saying Sith guy comments. You're going to say, oh, it's a she. Okay, cool. We hear you. But Sith guy, they've been calling him a guy. I would like to know
what you're basing that off of.
You know what they're basing it off of. But, don't encourage them.
I mean,
so...
Okay. So to me, like, it's got to be narratively plot elements. That's like everything it's pointing at. But even then, like, I was looking at, he's like the same height, same build. Like, he's about
skinny.
A head taller than Osha, which is about where Kai Mayer's been kind of with May. Like, the build, the height, all the narrative stuff points to him.
He cuts himself down out of the tree and puts his black thing on, and he's carrying a bag with him. Now, did you notice when he's at the very beginning of the episode, like he's fiddling around with his bag that he's carrying? Did you notice that when they show up on Kofar?
With his bag.
Yeah, he keeps fiddling around with his bag when they get there, so I'm assuming he's making sure his whole outfit is there.
You got to keep your super secret Sith suit,
Got that helmet shoved in there. So I'm assuming, he cut himself down or whatever and put on his suit and went and did his business.
Now, if it's not him, I think we have a problem. Because then I don't think there's anybody it could be that it would make sense and would be compelling. Because then I feel like it has to be nobody we've been introduced to yet.
Or
at that point, I'm like, why are we being introduced to this nobody who hasn't had any part in the story yet?
Right.
I hope that's not the case. I don't want that.
That's one of my worries is it's not him. But some people have said it's Coral, so the other witch. I don't know if her body was laying around on episode 3 or not, but if it's gonna be if it is a woman and it's one of the witches, I feel like it would be her. I don't think it's Mother Anastasia. I don't think it's her because her death has to have some meaning, right? Like it kind of pushes May and Osha. So hers is kind of the story point, but I could see it being the Zabrak woman. Her head would fit in the helmet. Like, you know what I mean?
I also don't see a need for her to hide her identity from May, though, right? If she takes in May as a
Yeah.
kid, like, why put on a mask and pretend to be somebody else when you both already get along fine? You're already on the same
Yeah.
page. You both don't like the Jedi at that point.
Yeah, and I
I
hate
wouldn't
the
see the
idea of
need.
it being her, if it is.
Yeah, that
So
wouldn't make a lot of
it's
sense
got
to
to
me.
be Kamir. And if you read like his StarWars.com profile, I could pull it up, but I'm not going to. But either way, it's like
It's
it's
super
super
vague.
shady. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It,
short and vague. I was like,
yep.
and I've seen interviews where Leslie Headland was like, I had him in mind for this role. I was
Yep.
like, there's something else going on with this guy.
So I'm pretty sure it's him. A lot of people have said it's him. Some people are saying like there's some leaks that it's him, but with leaks, like it,
there's no telling.
it could be right or wrong. I mean, I take
Which,
your
if
word
it
for it. But
is, I'm excited to see him play that role. If it
yeah.
is him, I want to see him mask off and completely change his persona.
Yep.
I love seeing characters play that kind of dual
Yeah.
personality where they have to disguise themselves. It's one of the
Kind of like
greatest
Palpatine.
things. Yeah, I was about to say it's one of the coolest
Yeah.
things about Palpatine is seeing him be Chancellor and then seeing him be Sith Lord. Like, I love the
Yep.
back and forth of that. So
Yeah.
I'd love to get to see some of that with Chimera. So I feel like he's done a really good job
Unsuspecting.
with his
Yeah.
character so far. I really want to see the
Yeah.
flip now.
Yeah.
And see what he
They
does
did
with that.
drop it would be cool if had they dropped no hints and it turned out to be him. But like it's been kind of hint
It's
heavy
been pretty
where
heavy. Yeah.
like he quotes the Sith code
Yeah.
and then he
He
keeps
knows a lot
talking.
about the Jedi,
He knows
right? Like,
so much about the
he's the
Jedi.
one
He
that
knows a
told
lot
her
about the
about.
Sith master.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally.
So I mean they've dropped a lot of hints that it's him. So I'm pretty confident it's him. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that's the case. And if it is him and it's a dude and the entire internet melted down over it, oh my gosh, a woman's gonna be a bad guy. Well, first of all, have you not met any mean women in your life? Like anyone can be a bad guy. I've met a lot of mean, all kinds of people. Like
It's fair.
any
Yeah.
anybody could be a villain. So
Yeah.
if it is a dude, whatever, I don't
Met a
care
few on the
who,
internet.
what it is, but I think it serves the story well that it's him because then you're going to have a little bit more with OSHA there. Like, oh, this is this guy that I kind of could have confided in. And now turns out he was just pulling my strings the whole time, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a very Sith thing, just kind of right there, pulling the strings, getting what he wanted. He's probably about to throw OSHA or May to the side and be like, I would rather have OSHA because she's better trained. Like, because she was with Soul for so long or whatever. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think there's going to be some tension at some point between OSHA and the Jedi, and with him kind of like that scene with him just standing right in front of her. I don't think that was just a scare tactic. I think there's more to it.
Yeah, and I love that he's really just kind of been hiding in plain sight, just constantly present and lurking around. I love that Soul doesn't really realize he's there until he's literally descending upon them.
Yeah.
Again, key to Sith Lords, like they get good at hiding themselves. But very similar to like Yoda in the prequels for Nestra at the beginning, she's like, something's off. Like there's a shift in something, which that was very reminiscent of kind of how Yoda talks about not being able to see clearly and how things are shrouded.
Yep. And Palpatine was right under their nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's very much within canon. Like this show, I'm trying to think of anything that would like ruin canon. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head that they have quote unquote changed is Ki-Adi-Mundi's age. Can you think of anything else
that's been changed?
Yeah, and his technically isn't even changed because his stuff wasn't canon anyways.
No,
so
it hasn't been. Nothing
I mean,
official was changed,
this show is very much so Star Warsy. So I mean, there's complaints for sure, but I don't think it's as far off as people think it is.
I think the most of what people have been upset about is like changes. It might be changes from Legends or things like that, or things that were added but weren't really present before, and so I don't know. I don't have an issue with adding more things. I mean, it's going to happen regardless as we continue telling stories in the Star Wars galaxy. So.
So for next, what do you want next? Do you want like predictions for the next half of the season, or do you want concerns for the next half of the season?
let's do concerns. We'll do
Okay.
predictions.
So things I'm concerned about. um, One, obviously, the Ki-Adi-Mundi thing. I think I'm pretty sure we're just going to have to accept the little gray area of he thinks this is just like a rogue Jedi cell type of thing. But now that he's aware, it does throw a potential issue in there. It really does. I mean, you could have picked any other Jedi, and I'm cool that he's in it, like whatever. But why bring up a problem if it could potentially be one? Now I trust that it's not going to be, but that on a lesser scale, we've always had the big issue or the big concern of how are they going to keep this a secret from the council? How is it going to stay so isolated that no one knows what's going on? And I think they had it set up perfectly to where everybody on this this planet dies except the Sith. But now Ki-Adi-Mundi's aware of everything going on, so it's going to be like, oh, they all just died. So I don't know. It seems as if it would bring up some continuity issues, or it potentially could. So that's probably my biggest concern, is how they're going to land that plane.
Yeah, I would say I don't think that's something I'm as worried about because, if you really want to talk about Legends and EU stuff, like the number of Force user groups that exist throughout all the mediums
there's a
is
lot.
significant, right? And
It's
the
a lot.
Sith are a very specific group that were really kind of viewed as the antithesis of the Jedi. They had, in the Legend stuff, they had a massive war. That's not really something we've gotten a lot of information on canon-wise, but I mean, that's a very specific enemy that they haven't seen or heard of for a very long time. And so I don't think it's unreasonable for them to assume that it's somebody out there who's ill-intentioned and not necessarily assume it's a Sith. I mean, they've just, previously with the witches of Brendok, right? Like that seems very akin to maybe some of the dark side stuff that the Night Sisters do, right? Like there's other groups out there who are doing sketchy. That's why they show up. They're worried that they're training kids to do this dark side stuff they don't like. So I don't see, on my end at least right now, any concern with needing to explain why they don't think it's the Sith, because there's so many different groups out there that are so different, right? There are some that are dark, some that are light, some that believe there's no such thing as light and dark, right? Like the again, just the massive expanse of different force sensitive groups that exist within the galaxy. You can pick and choose from Legends and canon. There's a lot that have been brought over to canon. So I'm not too worried about that. But along those lines, like the thing I am curious about is what is the deal with them not wanting to tell the council? Like, is that, because it seems pretty important, right? I get you don't want to have to have the political stuff like they've mentioned, but I also don't know why the council would have to reveal that they've had Jedi murdered, right? Like, do they not? That seemed like a bit of a weak explanation to me as to why they're not telling the council. And so I would have liked a little bit of information on that. Like if they had said, well, the council has told us to handle things discreetly so we don't have to talk to them about it, that makes more sense, right? Like I can be on board with that. The council said, hey, we don't need to know about everything you're dealing with. But the way it stands now, we don't really know what that dynamic is, if they're actually keeping things from the council, or if the council doesn't want to know because of those political reasons. So I wish that had been hashed out a little bit more in that scene, because to me that breeds a little bit of confusion as to why that dynamic exists.
So I agree with that. And we know the whole political nature is the downfall, right, of what happens with the Jedi, because they get too involved in it. And so I wouldn't have minded a little bit more background on how they get into that point of worrying about the political nature. We know they get there, but something, and maybe it's in the High Republic stuff, and I'm just ignorant and haven't read it. But all we know is her and Soul kind of talk about the political ramifications. We know Soul's already covered up something because Vernestra's mad about it from Brendok. And so that's going to be a cover up. And when you see that there's already one cover up, it's very easy to see that there's going to be another. I just think it's going to have to be pretty tight to make it all work out. And so I don't know, like, if I'm just pessimistic about it, because I'm not pessimistic about Star Wars as a whole. I've really enjoyed all the streaming stuff. Aspects of the sequel trilogy were good. Now, there's aspects I'm disappointed with the sequel trilogy as a whole, like, because I just don't think it was a very good story. But the series stuff, I think they've done fine with it. But maybe I still just have like a little bit of sequel trilogy hurt where things weren't planned very well at all. And I don't think they're going to make that mistake again. But I just think, like, man, if you mess up this writing and it's not a real tight argument, that's just like, it's lazy. And you know the backlash from the last decade of it's been like 9 years now. And so why would you make that mistake again? And so that's like probably my biggest worry is they don't plan this out well enough to line up with like the first 6. Don't mess up the first 6 movies. Like, just don't do something to mess those up. And so it has potential to. And so I think that's concerning for anyone.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I definitely hope that the show concludes in a way where they don't step all over that in a way that just I'm okay with taking some assumptions or taking some things like, well, that makes sense. I could see how that. But if I have to do a lot of leaps in logic to figure out why the Sith aren't revealed, but a lot of that's going to come down to these last 4 episodes and how what happens to the people here on this planet, what happens to this Sith apprentice guy. You know, I mean, there's a lot. How much evidence is left behind? Who knows what at the end? Because right now, I don't think it's at a point where it's like, oh, they should know it's a Sith. I don't think that's happened yet. I'm not even necessarily sure that Soul should think that yet, because Dark Jedi were very much a thing, right? Like, Jedi went bad, went to the dark side. They didn't necessarily become Sith.
Just kind of did their own thing.
And so, but there's 4 episodes left, right? And we have a lot left that could potentially create some problems. So I totally get what you're saying. I do hope that they manage to wrap it up in a way that doesn't leave us feeling that way.
Yeah. Do you have any other concerns?
I'm just not sure. I feel like they've been hitting on some really big themes in this show. You know, we talked a good bit about like the Sith and the Jedi and the idea of balance, and you know, Soul kind of being this Qui-Gon-esque character who's a little bit different from the people around him. There's a lot of things going on, like comments and things that are brought up. Like so there's the idea about balance we talked about. We had Soul talking to Osha about truth, right? And how Jedi need to be truthful. But then we also have, like in this episode, Jackie was talking about how, you know, you're not defined by your loss, but by what you survive. There's a lot of these things being thrown around, and I'm not sure what the show's honing in on. And I don't want to get to the end of the show and just be like, well, they didn't really bring any of those things to a meaningful point. I love that comment Jackie made today, because at first I was like, it's kind of cheesy. But then I was like, well, Anakin, very much defined by his loss, right? Becomes Darth Vader. Like Obi-Wan and Kenobi, very much defined by his loss until he kind of gets over it. Ahsoka in the Ahsoka show, very much defining herself by her loss, right? Like we've seen throughout Star Wars this concept of like, if you define yourself by what you've lost, Luke, very much so. And then the idea of moving past it, you got characters like Kanan, who moves past lost, and then Luke, who does, Anakin, who ultimately does,
Obi-Wan.
And they find redemption and purpose and moving past just focusing on the things that have happened to them. Like that's a huge theme in Star Wars that just got dropped with this little line between Jackie of all people, who she's interesting to me. She seems to have some of Soul's. She seems to have some of Soul's wisdom,
and she's playful. Like like she's still a Padawan, but she's catching on.
Very much so. So I'm curious to see what they do with her character as well throughout the rest of this. But So there's a lot of these things that they're bringing up that I'm like, oh, that's cool. That points to this, or like this is a cool theme or a cool idea. Um, but like, I'm worried that it's all just going to amount to things that just got brought up, right? And that by the end of the show, we're not going to have like. There's no doubt when you look at the original trilogy, like it culminates on this idea of love and redemption, right? That like that love is greater than evil, right? And that there's no point where you're beyond redemption, and Vader
and
redeems
hope
himself, like and hope, right? Like core things of that movie. You can't sit there and be like, I'm not sure what the theme of Return of the Jedi is.
yeah.
I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to come away from this show feeling like, oh, that was the idea they were going for, because they brought up so many different things. I'm trying to figure out how they're going to coalesce into like, oh, okay, I like the idea that they brought up there, that they brought home.
Yeah.
With the
What's
way the
power
show
and who's allowed to use it? That's the big idea, right? Like, would you say that's the big idea out of this?
That's another big idea, right?
This whole story. If I were to define this story, I think that's what they're trying to get to. Is it the Force is this power, and who, I forget her exact phrase, but it's like who defines how it gets to be used or something. I think that's the big theme of this show. If I had to guess.
And that was a big line in episode 3, obviously, but at the same time, I don't know that outside that scene with the Jedi showing up and wanting to take the kids, I don't know that there's been a whole lot about that topic, though.
Nope.
They've been bringing up some other bigger issues. And so that's where I'm just concerned about, is like, they're bringing up a lot of different things, and I really want them to settle on something and like make it
go with it
by the end of the show.
I'm with you.
Because that's what I love, man. I love storytelling that drives home a point, that has like an idea behind it that makes you think and means something. And so I want them to wrap something up that by the end of the show, I was like, okay, I get what the show was about.
And I mean, that's even one of the
worried about that right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that the sequel trilogy even does well with. If you choose to watch it from that point of view of Rey finding herself, like identity. That's one. Yeah. I don't necessarily like how they do it, but like it's a theme, and
you could definitely look at that movies and say this is about like finding identity, right? And not necessarily knowing where you belong and where you fit in, and trying to find that and who you find it with.
And for Finn too, I mean that's a theme in those.
Like a lot of characters.
Yep, Ben Solo, like So I mean, even in Star Wars that is not well written, in my opinion, they stuck to their guns on some of these things. So I'm with you. I hope they can weave this together in this season, because we're positive about a lot of it, but at the same time, it's like there's only 4 more episodes. Where's it going? And so that's really my only main concern, is like, are they going to land the plane well? That should be everyone's main concern for every show, by the way. Not knowing where it's going as a whole maybe makes it a little more like, where are they going? But I don't know how long they plan for the Acolyte to be. 1 season, 2 season, like whatever. So just hoping they can kind of wrap it up well with being put in the box of that one line in the Phantom Menace of, we haven't seen the Sith for millennia. So I really hope that they don't goof it up.
And again, you know, they've talked about multiple seasons, but this really feels like a self-contained story.
It doesn't feel like multiple seasons.
And so I feel like the plan, maybe the plans are something different. We've talked about that before, but
let's go to predictions, because I think I have a wish list of how it's going to go to continue this story. So they're on this planet. This is what I want to happen. They're going to explain whatever happens on Brindok, I think is what that planet's called. They're going to explain that. Hopefully not a whole episode dedicated to it, but I think we're going to get the other side and kind of figure out what happened, and the Jedi are going to get some mud on their face over all of it. And I think from there, you're going to have the classic conflict of the hero, of the light side character. So May's going to have some issues. She's going to have to choose which way she's going to go once she learns something that didn't go the way she thought it would, or thought that it had went. I don't think May is the Acolyte, but I'm not sure that Osha is the Acolyte either. I think one person can make it out of all this. I don't know who the one person is, but I think one person can make it out. And I think at the end of all of this, because remember, there's that scene with the lightsaber flying into someone's hand. And I don't think it's Kymir's hand. It's not the Sith guy. So I'm assuming he gets taken out. Only one person's going to make it. That person is the Acolyte. And the big reveal at the end, once everybody's dead, except for that one person, is whoever the master is, whether it be Tenebris. I don't think it'll be Plagueis, but maybe Tenebris or whoever is before him, or whatever Sith figure they decide is going to be that launching point. I think they show up on this planet with whoever their Acolyte is. That's going to be the reveal, is who actually is the Acolyte and who is the master that they're going to go off with. And somehow the Jedi have to just completely overlook this. But that's kind of where I see it going, and I can see it continuing, not necessarily that. I guess it could continue being the Acolyte, and you just follow that master and apprentice doing bad things in a future season. But I think you move past this isolated incident of this one season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could see all of that unfolding. I know Plagueis is obviously canon. Has Tenebris been made? He hasn't been made canon yet, has he? He's still technically.
He's not. Plagueis is.
Yeah. So they could.
But
that's something they could change too, right? Like it doesn't have to be a Darth Tenebris. They could make somebody else up.
It'd be cool to see a Bith, though.
As much as I'd love, I don't know. Live action? How does that translate? I feel like it might look kind of goofy.
Well, they're in Tatooine, right? In episode 4, right? Don't you see them there? Or is it in episode 6 that you see them?
But I can't just see them without thinking.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Immediately where my mind goes.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I think most everybody's got to die for sure. Little predictions. I definitely think those moth things are about to wake up as soon as it turns nighttime. I think.
I forgot they were even in this episode.
Yeah, they were called Umbra moths, which is literally like moon moth, right? Like Umbra.
It's like a Pokemon.
I think they're gonna get split up. I think they're gonna deal with some other threats in the forest as well as Mr. Smiley.
That would make sense. Smilo Ren.
Yep, Smilo Ren. Yeah, that's what people are calling him. I love that name. Which I told you the other day, I finally realized his mask reminds me of those Japanese Oni masks.
Still haven't looked it up, and I'm not going to.
Anyway, I could see. So we know that there's this scene where Venestra is on planet. It looks like the same planet.
She ain't making it out of this.
It looks like it's daytime. No, I think she might. Like, what if
she's the Acolyte?
Shows up? What if she shows up after everything is done? And all
she's the cover up.
Is dead bodies and no evidence, right? Like at that point, you don't have a lot to go off of except somebody killed your Jedi. And maybe Kymir's character is there. Maybe he's dead too.
He ain't making it out of this.
No, I don't think. Not. But would you be able to look at him and be like, "Oh, he's a Sith"? Like, would that naturally?
If he's wearing all of his stuff and has a red saber, hanging around.
Did Dark Jedi use red sabers? I don't know. That's the thing. There's a lot that I'm not sure about.
I think that's a lot of minutia. If you're going to be like, they had a red saber, but they're not a Sith. I think that's
where you're having to leap a little too much.
Yeah.
But I could see a sort of story happen where I do think we'll get a master reveal, which I hope we really
that's do. What they're building up to.
And if he wipes everybody out, maybe including Kymir, I don't know, takes his body away, takes the evidence away.
Scorched earth.
I wonder if May and Osha survive and manage to flee the planet to get away from whoever that guy is. And so really, if that's the case, Venestra shows up, all she's got is dead Jedi bodies, right? And that's not a lot to go off of. And so, I don't know. I definitely think we're going to have several of our key characters die. I think May and Osha survive. I think
one of the two do.
I think they leave and just leave it all behind. I think they're just done.
I could see Osha being the Acolyte, seeing how goofed up the Jedi are. I could see Osha being the one that goes. And I think that would be a pretty cool story point because there's the rumors like, oh, Luke was going to turn bad at the end of Return of the Jedi. You know, they say that was kind of written in at one point. And you have all these what ifs, like what if, you know, Anakin stayed bad but wasn't Vader? And it's just like the bad guys completely squashed the good guys. Well, what if we actually have like this person who, for whatever reason, should not ever turn bad? What if she does and just stays that way? That'd be cool.
I could definitely see that happening if one of these Jedi kills May. If a Jedi kills
Yord,
May, I can see her completely turning her back on them.
I subscribe to that.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Because again, that's how it happens, right? Like fear and anger. That's what drives you to the other
here's
side.
my thought. I think I just thought of this, but this is more of a business decision than anything. If anybody on this in this show is gonna continue being in this show as the Acolyte, it's gonna be their showrunner. It's gonna be the Osha May actress. So it doesn't mean it has to be May, but I think Osha probably turns out to be the Acolyte, and because Leslie Headland's like, I don't think this show's going where you think it goes. So are you going to have like all this press and this is your main character and she's on everything? And then it's like, oh, it's actually Soul is going to be the Acolyte and go with the Sith Master or whatever. Probably not. So I think they probably all die except Osha, and she is the actual Acolyte and goes with the Master at the end.
I'd be very upset if it was Soul. That would make any sense to me. I think his character is important for continuing to have a kind of a litmus between what the Jedi are supposed to be. But
I don't think he makes it.
Even then, he's kind of leaning towards catering to some of the not great things that the Jedi do, and so he's not innocent in all this. He's an interesting character. I don't think he's going to make it out, unfortunately, because I love his character. What do you have any predictions for like the final flashback? So, do you think we get firm information on where the girls came from, or do you think that's going to be left vague, kind of like Anakin's birth?
I wonder what would be the best thing for them to do. I don't know. The best thing for them to do would not have been to introduce it that way at all, in my opinion. But if they did kind of say like, well, if the Jedi figured out how, you got to think that there's a Sith involved. So I think you might get like some kind of reveal like that, like this, they were made with dark side magic or whatever. I don't know. I kind of wish they'd just leave it alone and let us move on with it.
My thing is, I'm not really sure what that specific plot element adds to this story.
What does it serve?
Yeah, and if anybody's out there super passionate about that, and you're like, no, it makes total sense. This is like,
let us know,
because I'm not necessarily, not open to those ideas, but I just don't get how it serves the narrative at all to have to make this is where they came from.
Unless
I think the nature of them as twins, as being light and dark, like I don't have an issue with that, or their bond, right?
Or make them a dyad.
Jason and Jaina Solo are very much the same way, right? They were very close in the Force. The Force, it's not that weird of a thing. So I don't know.
I don't like that aspect because I just think like, why introduce something that is going to be something you've got to jump over hurdles for? Maybe they got a plan. Hope they got a plan, but it's like, that's kind of a sacred thing in Star Wars. Like, and if this one master knew it, okay, so let's say this one master knows if it's a Sith that helped with this. Say the Sith helps them do whatever to make these twins, but all of a sudden, like Plagueis and Palpatine are trying to create life, and these masters before knew how to do it, and somehow they don't. Yet Palpatine is all the Sith. Like in that idea that is canon, you just kind of dropped that. And I'm not like a Rise of Skywalker advocate, but if Palpatine don't know how to do it, and he has to go to cloning, none of them know how to do it, in my opinion. So. Yeah. But again, maybe it's like a Dathomir type thing where they do all kinds of crazy stuff. Like you can make a Zabrak like a like Savage. He's big and stuff like that. So maybe it just turns out to be something like that.
they literally bring dead people back to life. Like,
Yeah,
that's,
and maybe that's the case. Well, they said
mean,
she said they carried them though. So
we've seen some pretty sketchy force magic do some things that
yeah,
seem to defy life and death, right? But my thing is, and I don't think it messes up anything with Anakin, like being the chosen one. I think that's a very different thing. It's tied, but his thing is tied to a prophecy, right? Like, I don't mind his thing being so vague as to where he came from, the Force did it, whatever, because
to
it's tied
counteract
to a narrative purpose.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure what the narrative purpose for this is, and maybe
It's
it'll
like
be revealed. Maybe it'll be great, but I don't see it right now. I don't understand.
It could
what the point
be
of
an
that
unforced
specifically
error.
is. Could be.
Could be.
But I am looking forward to seeing the flash. I'm assuming we'll get a flashback from the Jedi side. I think,
and it's going to look bad on them.
It is.
I
really think.
I hope so.
Torben maybe does something to make May start that fire. I think that's probably why he carries the burden of that guilt. She seems really out of it in that scene. Like, she's not. And then
like maybe she was possessed or something.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense for her to start a fire and then hate the Jedi for it, right? Like,
yeah, we're missing something.
I feel like maybe he did something. I feel like that's why Kelnaka goes off on him.
Yeah,
is because he knows he did something.
Well, he for sure does something. Yeah, because or Kelnaka does something, but I don't think that's the case. It's one of those two.
Because I think he's set up to be the one sympathetic toward the girls,
and he would drink poison over how bad he feels.
Right? If we want to follow the dark side, right? He's afraid of these witches right now. They did that weird thing to him.
Yeah.
They're there, and he's totally thrown off. He's like looking around. He's like really messed up. So
yeah, that's true.
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hatred.
Yeah, I think he probably goofs up, and then you got to figure out what the other three do, because she wants all three of them, and she saw all four of them, and she saw all four of them do something. So yeah. I'll be interested to see. And what if it turns out to where it's like Indara, because she was the ringleader of that. What if she ends up being like, we got to take all of these witches out to cover this up? And so that they end up doing something like that. I mean, that's terrible. So I think it could go that way too.
And going back, we were talking about what would drive Osha away from the Jedi. I mean, that's another big thing, right? Like, you can't tell me when Sol tells her the truth of what really happened that she's not going to remember him telling her, hey, if you want to be a Jedi, you got to be truthful, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what got her to leave her family. Like, that's going to be an issue.
Kidnappers.
I think, when that comes up.
Yeah.
So
I think that when she figures out the rest of that story, that's probably what's going to push Osha a certain direction. And so I really hope they land it. That's all I got to say. Yep. And again, I really enjoy the show. It sounds like the last 10 minutes was super negative, but that was just our concern section. I think it's been good so far. It can get better. It could get worse, as any show could. So that's kind of where we see the Acolyte as it is today. So next week, episode 5, probably either going to pick up with a fight scene or the flashback. That's kind of where we're going. So I'm excited to see where that is. Otherwise, thanks for joining us. Let us know in the comments what you're thinking so far. If you don't like the Acolyte, let us know. Just be civil about it and let us know why you don't. We're cool with that. Just everyone be nice to everybody. What does Jackie Moon say? Everybody love everybody. And in that basketball movie, like everybody just be nice. So that's it though for another episode of The Force with Friends. We will catch you next time.